Nothing happened.
In the last part, I stripped out the rest of the interior and emptied out a load of stale fuel from the fuel tank. Then I left it there because the video got too long. I was going to cover the process of stripping down my shiny new drive shafts and prepping them to be welded up, but then I discovered my shaft wasn't long enough, so that put a lid on that for now. I can't use my original shaft because I'd already cut and welded it for fitment testing, so whilst I wait for another one to show up, I suppose it's time to open this can of worms. Vehicle wiring is one of those parts in every build I follow where I just glaze over. Don't get me wrong, when done right it can be one of the more impressive and visually appealing parts of a build. It's just so intimidating to me, and there's a high and often expensive consequence for getting it wrong. But there's no use in me kicking the can down the road, so let's put the meter in continuity mode and get this over with. So, one of the problems I've made for myself with the wiring, and with this project in general actually, is I bought everything on a pallet instead of buying a donor car and pulling everything I need from that. Because of this, every time I need a part I have to go to the breakers to find it. That means risking my life in health hazards like this. At least they left sanitizer this time. After hacking out a completely empty fuse panel from this Mark IV Golf, I found another panel which still had all its fuses inside a borer a bit further up the yard, which is just typical. I also took the clutch pedal switch because I'll need that too. My goal in this video is to at least get the engine cranking, but before I can do that, a few things need to be taken care of first. What's left of the broken dipstick pipe is replaced with this nice new one, which cost nearly 3 times more to ship than the part itself, thanks Autodoc. Off camera I installed a new oil filter, and here I'm carefully filling up with some cheap sacrificial oil, just to keep everything lubricated whilst everything hopefully turns over. All I need now is a battery. I have a few kicking around, some in better condition than others. Luckily I have a way of telling them apart. We've now got a permanent live going all the way there. There's a fuse there. It goes all the way down the front of the car. We've got a temporary junction box here. It's just using a dry lining box for now, just to keep it isolated. This is then going through the bulkhead. There'll be a third wire that goes off in that direction. And if we go through here, we've got it going to the starter motor. Ooh. So we're going to the starter motor. We've got a temporary ground wire that's going from the starter to the chassis. I know it's red, but that's just because that's all we have. And then just for testing, we've got a wire here that's going to the starter, which will just jump to crank it over. We've already filled it up with oil, and I've also just wedged a bit of wood back there just to stop anything from rocking when we try and start it. Also rotated the engine by hand, and there's no issues there, so I think we're ready to turn the key. It's not going to start because nothing else is connected, but we'll at least see if it turns over. Right, I think we are good to go. Do you want me to do it?
Yeah. It's going to be fine.
What am I touching on? Just
so yeah, if you just touch it on to...
Right, ready?
Will, yeah.
Nothing happened. Oh, I did. Okay. Nice. I thought it'd be as good a time as any to run the engine through a compression test.
Spark plugs are very oily, but...
The battery I used was starting to die though, so I couldn't get good results. I ran another test later on with a bigger battery though, and it seems okay. Safe in the knowledge that the engine would at least turn over, I could turn my attention to the wiring harness. The ECU is connected to 2 main harnesses, one that connects to most of the engine components, and another that mostly goes into the cabin and connects to things like driver controls. It's not quite as simple as that, but you get the gist. This is one of the other problems with not having a donor car. Because I didn't remove the harness myself, I can't know for certain where everything should reconnect. A lot of VW connectors look very similar, and I found some will plug into more than one thing. Luckily, the VW community loves to write things down, so using some forum posts and some technical documents found online, I can reverse engineer the harness and be sure I'm plugging into the correct components. So what we're looking at here is one half of the engine harness. This is the main part of the harness that goes to the injectors and the coil packs and various other parts that live inside the engine bay. So what I'm going to do now is work out what each of these connectors is for. Some of them are really obvious, like these ones, because there's 4 of them in a row. These clearly go to the coil packs, and these ones over here clearly go to the injectors. But then there are some ones like this that could go to anywhere, and some of them are similar enough that they look like they plug into different things. So my method of working out exactly what goes where is to follow these back to the main connector that goes into the ECU, which is this guy, and then using a reference and a multimeter, check that every wire goes back to the connector that I think it's going to, and then stick it in a spreadsheet. Then once I know which connector does what, I can stick a label on it, and then I know that it's definitely going in the right place. So my method here is, and I've got my laptop, here we are, and I've got a reference here. This is the pin out for the ECU connector, and then I've got a spreadsheet on this side, which I'm just using to write down where every pin goes. I know this information is already available online in various places, but because I'm always a bit wary that different cars might have slight variations, I just want to double check before I plug everything in. So here's my method. I've got the ECU here, and this one, I have to use this as a bit of a reference, because even though the pins obviously terminate out here, that these aren't actually labelled, so I don't know which pin is which. So I have to hold them up to the connector like this, and then work out which pin is which. I don't know if you can see in there, if you focus, you can just about see numbers. So the numbers are on the ECU side, but they're not on the connector. So what I have to do is basically work backwards. I've got a little bit of welding wire sticking out of the connector, so I'm currently on pin 82, and the reason I've got this wire here is because I can't get my multimeter probe in there, so that's just in there to allow me to easily stick a probe on. And I've taken the protective cap off. So if we take pin 82, I've just confirmed it's a white wire. Follow it all the way down through this loom. I could unpick all of this loom, but I'm not going to yet. It branches off towards the T14A connector. I can just inspect the wires going into this connector, and there are no solid white wires going in here, so I know that it's not going to T14. So we continue along, and then it goes into this mess. And because I can't really see, unless I was to take all the loom conduit off, which probably would make my life a bit easier, but I could just look through all of these connectors and just check what the colours are that go into the backs of them. It just so happens that this grey connector, and you can see the white wire there, that goes into pin 3 of this connector. And let's see if I can do this one-handed. If I take my multimeter, which is on continuity mode at the moment, jam that into there. This is a lot easier to do when I'm not filming it. So that's now in there. And then if I touch that, so now I know that that pin on this connector is connected to this pin on this connector. I go back to my document, I look at where pin 82 is. Pin 82, crankshaft position sensor. So I know that pin 82 should go to the crankshaft position sensor. So then what I do is, just in my spreadsheet here, is I just write down the colour, which is white, and then we do crankshaft position sensor, and then I'm just putting a Y here to confirm that it has been continuity tested. And then just for my own reference, I know that it goes to pin 3 on the 3-pin connector, so I'm just going to put to pin 3, grey, doesn't have a W in it. And then I just stick a bit of tape on there with a label, so I know that's crankshaft position sensor. I'm probably going to end up tracing more wires to the back of this connector, but that's okay. I do actually have a label maker for this sort of thing, but because of how many of these I'm going to do and they're all going to get pulled off, I'm going to save those for making fancy labels. So now I just got to do this whole thing for this entire loom. So this is all of the harness in its entirety, both halves of it, and it's now been mostly labelled. So I've got most things labelled up, like this air temperature sensor, a couple of knock sensors. We already knew what these were, but I labelled them anyway for completeness. Still a few question marks, like this one here. Appears to have some heat resistive sleeving over it, so it probably goes down the back of the engine. I have a feeling that's a speed sensor off the gearbox, but I'm not sure yet. But it doesn't go directly to the ECU, so I need to do a little bit more digging on that one. And there's this one here, which I haven't been able to figure out yet either. Now, what I've been doing is I've been tracing every single ECU pin to a connector on the harness, but there are some of these connectors that don't connect directly to the ECU. Some of them appear to actually terminate here at T14A, and then they carry on along here to the other side of the loom, which goes towards the inside of the car, in the cabin. And this, most of these have already been cut, so I have a feeling some of them go here. So I'm going to continue tracing where all of these come out here. I have a feeling one of these is like a speed sensor or something, because so far I haven't managed to find one that plugs into that, and I'm not sure how the ECU would normally get its speed signal to then pass to the clocks. I'm hoping it doesn't use ABS to do that, because there's no ABS on this car. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the connector, and I can see there's 3 cables coming out of it. We've got a yellow-black, so that's like a pretty thick wire, and then we've got a purple-white and a solid brown. I think that it connects to T14A, and I can already see some of the wire colours that are in here, so I think we should probably just confirm that first. How do I get these connectors, man? Is this just a VW thing? Because I've never known it to be this much of a problem. Now, my understanding is that, well, the only way I managed to get these off is if you get a flat head and you just do that. Is that the right way? Well, it worked. Actually, do these wire colours correspond? No, they don't. Now, what's interesting is that there are pins that go into T14A that don't come out the other side. So, for example, pin number 14, which is this like a purple, like pink grey cable. There's a pin in there. Can you see that? No, you can't. It's not light enough. Anyway, there is a cable going into the back of there, pin 14. Pin 14 on the other side, vacant. So that's a bit weird. Although I am just having a quick look to see if everything that does go in. Now, see, pin 12 is that purple, like pinky white colour that goes into pin 12. That actually connects to this here, so I have a feeling that's the cable. On the other side of the connector, it comes out yellow-black or yellow-brown. Can't tell from this light. And in fact, it's happening all over the place. Pin number 2 is a black-white. Pin number 2 on the other side is a black-green. Well, I guess I'm just going to have to check continuity all the way through the cable, through the connector, and then and see where it comes out on this side, and then note it down. Then I should be able to find out exactly what this cable is. So, first of all, we'll just verify that pin number... So pin number 3 on this connector here, if I stick a multimeter in there, which I can't because it's too small, and I guess we then just need to check that it corresponds with the right colour on this connector. One side of the probe to pin 3 on this connector, and I'll try and keep it in, and then I will connect the other side, the other probe, to pin number 12 on this connector. Try and do this with 2 hands. Okay, so that is going into pin number 12. So pin number 12 on T14A goes into pin number 3 on this connector. So now what I need to do is work out where pin number 12 on this connector, Where's the other side of the T14? Ah, there it is. So then we need to work out where pin number 12 comes out, which is this wire here. That's pin number 12, so it changes colour through the connector. And then I've got to trace it through this stack. And it's there. It's been cut. So let's just check that we have continuity all the way through. We should do. There we go. Cool. So now I need to work out what this wire is. I didn't cut this, by the way. It was already cut. So I imagine that it probably went to this bunch of stuff over there. So I'm just going to do a little bit of fact finding. 1 second. Right, so then what I've done is I've downloaded this guide. This is actually a forum post, but I've downloaded it as a PDF because the internet up here is really bad. So I've always got a copy locally, and it's got all of the connectors that go into the cabin. So you've got the brown connector, the orange one, the white one, but it also has the early cars had what's called a T10, later cars had what's called a T14. The 14, I believe, is the number of pins on the connector. So what I can do is, because I know that that purple white wire went to pin number 12, I can just go down here, T14A. It's the same as T10 except with the additional pins. Pin 12, purple white, oil level, temp sensor to dash. So this actually goes to the dashboard, but I know that that is supposed to be connected to the oil temp sender and level sender. And just to show you what I'm talking about, I'm talking about that thing. So this guy is sending the oil level and the temperature. So that's what that connector plugs into, which does make sense because it's got this this stuff on it, which means it must go down the back of the engine where the hot side is, and it's really oily and greasy where it's close down to the road. So that makes sense. So I'm pretty certain that that is the oil level plug. So I'm going to put a label on that one. And then just for completeness, I'm just going to add to my spreadsheet here pin number 12, and we've continuity checked that one, and it goes to, there we are. Right, so let's stick a label on it. Okay, everything is all labelled up and ready to go on the car. And I also have most of the things I need in the spreadsheet. I'm also going back through the individual connectors and then tracing them back to where they're supposed to go, because not every connector on the ECU goes to every pin on the connector. Some connector pins go to other things like power and ground and things. So just a quick update on what's going on in here. So I think in a previous update I had these all connected up. I've since put a bigger battery in because this one down here just didn't have enough oomph to get it going, so we got this bigger one which definitely does. Got a fuse in there. I've replaced this socket box down here with a proper distribution panel, so that's now all isolated. At the moment we've got the main feed coming in on the left, we've got the starter motor connected to the one in the middle. On the right, that's connected through, that's that small one, that also comes through this same hole. And so you've got the thick one that goes to the starter motor down there. We've also replaced the that big red cable with a correct black cable, which I managed to find. And then we've got just this long cable for now because I can't cut it down. This is connected to what on the Micra was the main battery input to the fuse box on the car. So this is basically powering the Micra's fuse box. It's coming up through here, through this mess, most of which will be able to go, and then back in through the wing, and then it comes in through down there, all along there, and then towards the fuse box. It's just hanging out down there. So we'll be able to pull most of that inside of here and just run ignition from down there and power straight down to there. So this long cable, this thin cable, will be able to just go directly over to there, which will save some cabling. So let's just connect power and ground. Pop these on, ground on. This little light comes on, and then actually I'll just double check that there's nothing in the way. Oh, also need to mention this. So I've got the exciter wire that's going into there. That's actually just coming off the existing wire that used to come out of there. So that's just temporary for now. Eventually the VW loom will do that job, but this is just for testing. So now if we come over here, we've got lights on there. If I turn, then we've got the lights on the dash. I don't know if you can see over there. Let me just adjust the exposure. Can you see? Yeah, so that's the main lights coming on. Indicators. That's good. There's no horn. Fuel light. Well, that makes sense because there's no fuel in it. If I turn the key. Nice. The starter motor is not disengaging properly. I don't know why that is. But we're making progress. This bunch of cables down here is the original Micra's engine loom. Completely necessary now. We did have it connected through because there were some bits and pieces that I needed, but those have all been completely eliminated now. So I think now what we need to do after that is tidy this mess up, and then we need to attach the engine harness, which hopefully will be a lot easier now I know where everything plugs in. Get a fuel line, 2 fuel lines from here and over there, over to there. Check that we've got spark, put some fuel in it, and we should be able to get it running. With all that work done, I came out of this with a much better understanding of how everything talks to each other. And now, instead of scanning through different documents and posts, I can just look up
the mega sheet
and trace every wire from beginning to end. It also makes removing parts of the harness I won't be needing a lot easier with less chance of error. Now all I need to do is connect everything up and see if the ECU survives. But I still have some work to do, so that will be in the next video. Thank you for watching so far, and I hope you'll join me in the next part. Bye for now.